So the next part is program implementation. There are two parts of this program implementation. The purpose of this step is to develop plans to ensure the successful adoption and implementation of the intervention program, in our case, serious game. Actually, I was very impressed by that component over there. You can see this one that you included. I just wish the other was like this. The sustain part. Actually, at this stage, you have plan for adoption, implementation, and others say sustainability, how the game will be sustained. Do you want people to play just once and leave it, the game, or you want people to play once and tomorrow? You have to have a plan for that. A deliberate plan, how you will get people interested. Actually, game designers have something called the curve of interest. It's designed to capture the player within 30 seconds of opening the game. 30 seconds is even too much. Within a few seconds, you decide if you're going to play the game or not. So maybe most gamers always try to anticipate this curve of interest. For example, in many games, I'm sure you've seen this, they first allow you to play, even if before you register for the game, they allow you to play, and then when you've played enough and you're probably really liking it, something pops up. Please register for this game to continue. They've already captured you. It's a deliberate process. You just rush and register and go back to play. So adoption and implementation performance objectives are outlined. You specify determinants of adoption. Before you specify determinants of the behavior, of the performance behavior. At this stage, you specify the determinants of adoption and implementation. And then change objective, methods, practical strategies, useful adoption and implementation are determined at this stage. And then you also create materials to promote the adoption at this stage. So, for example, you designed a project to help people remember to take their medication. But what determines whether or not someone actually listens or read a pamphlet or play the game? It's adoption. So I actually looked for a definition for this, and I found some definition related to serious games or games in general. So this adoption is defined in just technology. There's a company, an online company, they say they define technology adoption as a process that begins with awareness of the technology and progresses through a series of steps that end in appropriate and effective usage. I like this definition. So they outline 5 steps of this process. So in serious games, I think similar definition can be applied. First, the person has to know about the game. So awareness. But between them knowing to them using the game appropriately and effectively is a long way. There's a lot of things that have to happen between knowing about the game and using the game. Actually, this is now I am having this. I'm experiencing this stage of Swaziolo, thinking very carefully about this adoption. So there are several steps. Maybe I won't go to them. There's awareness. So potential users learn enough about the technology and its benefit to decide whether they want to investigate more or further about the game, for example. And then after that, they do some assessment. Potential users evaluate usefulness and usability of the technology. And after assessment, they decide whether or not they will accept it. Potential users decide to acquire and use the technology or decide not to adopt. Learning. So users develop skills and knowledge required to use the technology. So if it's a game, how do you play the game? There are rules towards the game. Is it difficult? Is it easy? And then usage. Users demonstrate appropriate, effective use of the technology. So there are many steps that as a serious game researcher, you need to think about when deciding. You need to think about the steps. Okay, so for Swazi YOLO, this is what we are planning to use. So we're going to use a lot of marketing for Swazi YOLO, a lot, in all online platforms. Maybe in a couple of months, in a couple of weeks, we will fully utilize this. And then you'll direct people to our website. They'll get screened for eligibility. If eligible, they get a chance to download the game, sign informed consent, get randomized into intervention and the control group. So also in Swazi YOLO experience, we identified the network to promote adoption. We created promotional materials, so video, infographics, and pictures that we're going to use. And then we also published the protocol. These steps really helped us a lot because we got a lot of feedback for our protocol in terms of ethical issues and some methods and strategies that we use. So I'd suggest if you're planning an intervention, please publish your protocol. It's very useful to get early feedback before you start working on the intervention itself. And then the last part that is actually built throughout the intervention is evaluation plan. This actually starts much earlier when formulating objectives. It's a crucial part of any program. The intervention evaluation design already included in the intervention protocol, study protocol. So it includes PECO, right? So your research question has to be clear to anyone, right? And then also your hypotheses, you need to design them in such a way that they are measurable, they are testable, and they make sense from the game. So their hypothesis has to be linked to what happens in the game, the outcomes of the game or the intervention. Then also statistical analysis should be well described. And then measurement tools are well calibrated, they're pre-tested, and they're validated. And then appropriate ethical clearance. And also you test the randomization because we are doing a controlled randomized study. So you test the randomization and make sure that everything works. So we've already done that, and the Swazi YOLO evaluation plan looks like this. So we have an intervention group and we have a control group. And then we have, we'll expose them to the intervention. Then we'll measure at the end. So most interventions I'm seeing measure just before and after. And then they see an increase, it's effective, it works. Some interventions measure like this, both control and randomized group. I think the strongest intervention design is one that measures before and after for one group and before and after for the control group. And then measure the effect in the difference between the two groups. So this is an example. For example, if you think about certain behavior and the prevalence of that behavior in the intervention group is 19%, in the control group is 19%, right? So baseline, correct, say there's no difference. And then you give the intervention, and then you see 40% in the control, and then you see 22% here. The difference is not, maybe it's not 20%, maybe. The difference is actually the difference between the two in the intervention group. So this is the intervention design of Swazi YOLO.